Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. If you're joining me this afternoon, Sunday afternoon, HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Normally, we do a pregame and a postgame on game days, which was Friday. During my pregame, we covered a lot of stuff with the North Carolina Greensboro matchup that was upcoming. Went through a lot of the talking points there. And then I talked about doing the postgame later that night. I also later, getting closer to game time, typically put out a reminder on Twitter or X that we're going to have to tune in 35, 40 minutes after the game, after press conferences for those post game analysis. I did not put that tweet out. I later in the day, before the game started, before Arkansas lost, made the decision, since I was covering so much high school basketball on Saturday with a lot of guys at Arkansas's recruiting, talking about the Hoop Hogs, multiple players, and a lot of other high major and D1 players. I kind of wanted to wait. I decided to wait until Sunday. Of course, I'll have later today my Pig Trail Nation segment, but I wanted a little bit more of a deeper dive, so I decided to do post game plus analysis plus the recruiting stuff and some Pro Hog stuff. I decided to save it for Sunday. Having gotten all that out of the way, I want to thank my sponsors. Some of those appeared on the thumbnail, some don't, but Parkway Automotive here in Little Rock. I also want to thank Fence Brokers Inc. Here in Central Arkansas, and my newest sponsor, who I've been doing my pregame analysis from, Jose's Bar and Grill in Town. Friday's pregame was done there, the most recent one, and so just kind of thanking everybody. But again, welcome to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We're going to do a post-mortem. We didn't have a post-game. We're going to have a post-mortem on what went wrong for Arkansas. I thought a lot of things went wrong. We've seen Arkansas struggle defensively, especially the second half of the previous game against Old Dominion. That was pretty ugly. Arkansas, gets out of Bud Walton Arena with a 9-point win that night. But that was a tough matchup for Arkansas. But I don't think Arkansas is clicking on the defensive side of the ball in terms of, a lot of guys with experience, a lot of individual guys who have gotten praise as defenders, but it's not really come together. And Arkansas's got some sore spots when you talk about, where Musman talks about lack of physicality, lack of ability to defend around the basket. Yeah, Arkansas is getting a lot of block shots in space, but they're not really deterring opponents from getting easy looks with using size, their frame, getting into folks, turning guys away. There's just not been a lot of that. And so it came back to bite them. But there's several things to talk about here with North Carolina Greensboro, because some of it, I don't want you to take it some of the initial things I say is excuse making, but there are some realities. Number one, no one's immune from an upset in college basketball. There were at least 5 ranked teams upset, mostly by mid-major schools in the past week alone. I mean, schools that jump out to me: USC, Villanova, St. Mary's. There was another upset yesterday during the Saturday games. So you're seeing a lot of teams getting knocked off. I think it was Florida Atlantic, a top 10 team, a team that made it to the Final Four last year, was upset on Saturday. So you had a lot of ranked teams. That can happen. I think Arkansas fans are used to it not happening against mid-majors. It's happened before with Eric Musselman, but not in Bud Walton Arena. This was the first loss that Arkansas suffered under Muss at BWA in a non-conference game. And so 36-0 coming into that one, 36-1 now. So upsets happen. I think the other thing is, this is a tough matchup for Arkansas, not just because they lost this game, but if you look back at last year's game against this team, that really only returned one starter, but they had several guys back who played against Arkansas last year. It's the way, this is a very well coached team. It was a 20 win team last year, 14-4 in its league. Arguably a really good basketball team. It's been a good program. It's had some NCAA success, but the head coach over there, just in his third year, Mike Jones, they do an outstanding job. But they match up really well with Arkansas on how they play. A year ago, this team held Arkansas to 33% overall field goal shooting. We know Arkansas was not a good three-point shooting team a year ago. 17% from three. It was actually pretty ugly on Friday night as well. But where Arkansas really stood out in that game a year ago, a couple of things. One is Arkansas's defense was better than what Arkansas showed Friday night. But also you had a huge discrepancy at the free throw line. Arkansas took 33 free throws a year ago to only 11 for Greensboro. And you say, well, what does that really mean? That's one game. When you looked at the early, granted small sample sizes, but if you look at the early statistics this year, Greensboro was averaging 10 free throws a game. They took 11 against Arkansas last year. The Hogs took 33 last year. Came into this game this year averaging 32 free throw attempts a game. So you thought, if anything, if Arkansas struggled again dealing with Greensboro offensively like they did a year ago, I mean, Arkansas trailed by 5 at halftime a year ago, 26-21. Arkansas wasn't much better at halftime in this game, 24 points. The big problem was Greensboro really got into Arkansas. When you look at the final stretch of the first half, the game was tied 15-all. A 23-9 run to close out that first half. And this is where you really started to see Arkansas not execute at both ends, but really the defense really starting to give up a lot of easy stuff, a lot of easy scores for Greensboro, 23-9. So Arkansas not only scores 24, but low 20s again in back-to-back years, but Greensboro's sitting at 38, a 14-point lead. Greensboro grew that to 15-point lead early in the second half. Arkansas probably had its best stretch, getting it down to 4. When you look at offense, starting to get to the free throw line. I mentioned the free throw disparity last year and what the averages were coming in. Stuff I talked about in the pregame, by the way, on Friday. Arkansas did not have that advantage at halftime. It was Arkansas was 3 of 4, and I believe Greensboro was similar, like 6 of 6. But both teams didn't shoot a lot of free throws in the first half. Arkansas started getting to the free throw line in the second half. But in this game, Arkansas only finished +2 in free throws attempted. They did have to foul late in the game to stop the clock, but there wasn't the discrepancies and the disparities and the margins last year and what the teams were averaging were nowhere near close to where Arkansas needed to be in a game where Arkansas struggled offensively as well. Arkansas has been really good offensively through the exhibition season, through the first 3 regular season games. And even though there were some things we can point to, we're going to go through it, that were good on offense. I thought overall nothing came easy. And you can look at the assist numbers to see that for the Razorbacks in this game. There weren't a lot. And so Arkansas's got a lot of gifted scorers, guys that can drive. When the three-point shot wasn't working and they started getting into their drive game, they started having success either getting in the line or getting some tough finishes. But nothing came easy. This reminded me a little bit of last year's team that couldn't shoot threes and they had to drive. Arkansas didn't get anything really from 3, and the other team was getting it there as well. And so you started to see, to me, just a team that was really had a hard time getting into its offense. So 24 points at halftime, not very good. I think it speaks pretty plainly to the fact that the defenses that Greensboro was using, they played a little bit of man. Most of their man principle, though, was like a zone because guys weren't really guarding guys on the opposite side of the floor, wherever the strong side was. You see that in basketball, but there was a real attention to detail to keeping guys as close to the lane on the 4 guys that didn't have the ball, playing off enough. So it had a lot of zone principle. And then they actually did go into these morphing, expanding zone defenses where they were spread out when the ball was on the perimeter. Anytime there was a cutter or a drive, it collapsed really quickly. And so some of the help defenders were able to just dig down on Arkansas's drivers and force a lot of first half turnovers because Arkansas wasn't moving the ball side to side, getting it on both sides of the court to get any defenders really out of position. I thought, Musselman said post-game, I asked him about it. He said that Arkansas had over, they charted, we know they want 200 passes a game, and that they were over that. And, he didn't really like the idea that I suggested. I thought the ball movement was stale for Arkansas a lot. After going back and watching the game again, I still feel pretty confident about that statement because there were times when the ball movement was fine and they did make a lot of passes, but how effective was that? How many easy looks did Arkansas get? You finished with 7 assists on 24 made field goals. That says a lot. 2 of those assists were in the final minute when the game was over. The defense has changed for UNCG at that point. Arkansas is no longer the opponent. You got a 10-point lead with a minute to go. Your opponent's the clock. You're not trying to foul anybody. You're not trying to stop the clock, and you're defending a little differently. We know how games finish like that. When you've got a 4-possession lead going down to the last minute and a half a minute, you change a little bit how you play. And so Arkansas had 2 assists and 2 3-pointers in the final minute 7. That says everything. They finished with 7 assists. They really had 5 in the meat of the game before it was effectively over. I thought they struggled getting easy looks because of that. So even though they made 200-something passes, I don't feel like it was clicking for Arkansas in terms of getting defenders out of position. Arkansas does end up having a 48-point second half, but a lot of that 17 free throws they made in the second half, they were just guys were going one-on-one, one-on-three, getting downhill. Arkansas's got some really talented finishers when you look at Ellis, Devo Davis, Tremont Mark, Khalif Battle, and those guys started getting some of that. But I didn't really see easy scores where you're making that extra pass or a guy's cutting behind somebody and it just comes easy. Arkansas did not get anything easy. On the other side, I thought a lot. This is why your offense, as good as Arkansas's been there, you have an off night. I haven't talked about the threes, 4 of 23. They hit 2 of those late in the last minute. In fact, they had 3 in the final under 3 minutes to go. So I think L. Ellis hit one of his 2 late threes at about the 2:30 something mark. So before that, Arkansas was like 1 of 17, 1 of 18. Conversely, UNC Greensboro was pretty close to its season number. It was a team making 11 threes a game, shooting 30, right around 38, 39, 38%. Not far off of that. 9 of 24. Arkansas really didn't take that away. And that was for 37.5%. So they hit right around their efficiency. But it was so much better than Arkansas finishes 4 of 23, 17.4%, almost identical percentage to last year's three-point shooting, except Arkansas took, they ended up taking 23. And I thought a lot of the three-point shots were not rhythm shots. They were Arkansas settling either early in clock or just not really trying to probe and move that ball side to side. And they had like 3 or 4 consecutive possessions in that first half when that run, right around the time that run started for Greensboro, where they just took deep threes that weren't even close before. Early in clock, again, they didn't put pressure on defenders by moving inside and out or getting it side to side. They settle. That's stale. So you can look at the arc of a game and see positives. Again, the second half, Arkansas cut it to 4. They got it down. They went down 15. They got it down to 4 on a Devo drive midway through that second half. But then they continue to not be able to hit from 3. A lot of that, again, guys just putting shots up, trying to get hot. I didn't see a lot of rhythm and flow with energy on the ball. But there were times Arkansas had open threes in both halves after a good pass or a couple of good passes. They just couldn't knock them down. Caleb Battle hit a 3 early in the first half, that kind of fed into that getting to a 15-15 all tie after falling behind 13-6. Arkansas kind of scratched back in there, tied it up, and he hit a 3 there. And then Arkansas had a big drought. They were, like I said, 1 of 17 they started. Maybe they started 1 of 18. I lost track after 1 of 17. I probably should have been a little bit better with my note taking at that point. And so their final 3 threes came inside of 3 minutes left in the game when they're really at that point. I mentioned they cut it to 4 midway through that second half, but UNC Greensboro built multiple double-digit leads down the stretch. When you look inside the last 4.5 minutes, 13, 10, 11, Arkansas would try to get it down. They had it to 5 a couple of times in between the 10-minute mark and the 5-minute mark, but they could never get over the hump, and Greensboro always made a play. This is just a bad matchup for Arkansas. So much of it resembled what happened a year ago, and Arkansas won that game at the free throw line. I mentioned the margins there, and they just didn't have it here. They certainly didn't have it at the three-point line. They got destroyed there. When you look inside the arc, Arkansas finishes 20 of 31, almost making 2 out of every 3 shot attempts inside the arc. The problem with that, again, like I said, and they got to the free throw line in the second half. I think the biggest problem there is you were down double digits, 15 points, and you were down against a really good team. This is back-to-back games. If I'm going to call out who the best player on the floor was in back-to-back games, it's been a guy probably from the other team. 2 games ago against Old Dominion, it was the big guard, Jenkins, scoring from 3, having his way, getting to the basket. 21 points, a game-high scoring margin, scoring output in that game. In this game, it was Keyshawn Langley, who had just lit up Vanderbilt with 26 points in a close loss. Greensboro put together a really strong half to close out that Vanderbilt game. They were down 12 at halftime, down 16 early in the second half, had a chance to win it late, got within 3 points in the 30 seconds left. They were down 2 with 8. Maybe they didn't truly ever have a window to have a possession to win it, but they got it close enough to have a chance to win. Against Arkansas, they put 2 halves together. This was the better team on Friday night. I think what this also shows you are guys that have been in their system. Yeah, they replaced a lot of starters, but most of the guys were already on campus and guys that were part of their team last year that are factoring into what they're doing now. And I think you could still see, although Arkansas's got a lot of talent and experience, especially defensively. I saw a lot of ball watching when the Langley twins, especially Keyshawn with the scoring, but both of them were very effective at making that next pass that led to an easy score. I mentioned Arkansas didn't have a lot of easy scores. You know, Greensboro has 2 more field goals than the Hogs in this game, 26-24, 2 more field goals, much better from 3. They ended up 17-23 at the free throw line. 74%, they kept that margin down, only 2 fewer free throws, but they had 15 assists on those 26 made field goals. So more than half of their buckets were assisted, and a lot of them, to me, were just easy looks. So even when Arkansas had stretches where there might have been some good defense and some stops, they didn't have enough. And second halves, when you look at Old Dominion, Arkansas just kind of fell apart defensively. Up until that point, they had looked like a team that was good on that end. When you looked at the first 2 games plus the first half, for the most part against Old Dominion, I thought they didn't close the first half real well either against the Monarchs. So maybe a little bit more than a half in that game. But in this game, in both halves, it seems like Greensboro was able to dictate what it wanted on offense. And although Arkansas will block a few shots, they're just not getting steals anymore. Arkansas, this was a good offensive rebounding team coming in. This is where Arkansas did the job. Trevor Brazile, I said in pregame, needed to have his best game at Arkansas this year. Probably, for Arkansas to have the kind of night it wanted to have. I thought early on he was going to do that. He had a putback on Arkansas's first possession. He was rebounding the ball well, had a season-high 9 rebounds. He had another multiple block game, 2 blocks in this one after having 9 in the previous 2 games. But when I look at Arkansas inside, interior-wise, defensively, I've talked about Langley, but Mikael Brown-Jones got in foul trouble in the first half. He hit a 3, he had 2 fouls, and it was Langley that did most of the scoring in the first half, Keyshawn. In the second half, Brown-Jones was the biggest problem because he was having his way inside. He finishes with 16 points, only missed 2 field goals, and I thought his quickness, his strength, and he just when he got the ball in the paint, it didn't matter who Arkansas had in the game on that front line. He went to work on them. He got into him. He spun on. He felt where the body was leaning on him. How they were trying to defend him, and he'd go the opposite direction, or he'd have an up and under move. But he just outquicked, outsmarted, and was more physical at 6'8". He was more physical than Arkansas's defenders. I thought that's where Brazile struggles, and some of the Arkansas's bigs. I thought Chandler Lawson had a really good defensive stretch after not starting for the first time in the regular season. Musselman went small ball with Jeremiah Davenport. He had an early 3 spinning and out on him. It looked pretty good. He had a couple of blocks on defense. He did a couple or 2 or 3 good things. He was not sustainable in this game because Arkansas couldn't figure out defensively what it was doing and how to be effective. But Chandler Lawson came in that second half stretch where Arkansas dug back into it and had some really good defensive possessions inside contesting shots. That's where the problem's been, because when Musselman described 2 games ago all these blocked shots by Brazile and some of these other guys, Mekhi Mitchell, he termed it as finesse defensive plays. And I think what he means is Arkansas is not getting into guys physically and blocking shots that way. You got some really good length and athleticism and guys playing in space. And yet it's still rim protection. You still need some of that. But I don't think what he's talking about where their problem areas are, the block shots are a little bit misleading. Arkansas is a top 10 team nationally coming into that game in block shots, but there's a lot more to defense. Arkansas was forcing turnovers when you looked through the preseason against Purdue, when you looked against Alcorn State, getting double digits in steals. That has dried up. I mean, this was a game, again, when you look at the steal discrepancy, 8-4, Greensboro doubled Arkansas up. Arkansas had those 12 first half turnovers. Only 1 in the second half, but at that point, you're down to a really good mid-major team by double digits, and now you're having to scratch your way back. You can't undo what you did in the first half. It was 12-7 in the first half. It ends up 13-10. So Arkansas doesn't force a lot of turnovers, only 4 steals. I mean, it's been 4, 3, 4. Those have been the numbers of steals. And so when you're not a great rebounding team, even though Arkansas did a better job there, they still finished -2 overall. +1 on the offensive glass. Neither team went nuts there, 6-5. But you've got to find ways to get easy scores, get in transition. And Arkansas just wasn't able to do that enough because you can't get live ball turnovers all of a sudden. Arkansas is not getting the steals. It tells you that teams are not having trouble attacking Arkansas too, because you just look at all the metrics. You look at the numbers. I mean, 26 of 54, 48% shooting for Greensboro on the road. That's good. 9 of 24 from three, 37.5%, and they got to the free throw line. So this to me was a game where Arkansas, it's not a great matchup for the Hogs. They were primed for an upset. At some point, I mean, Musselman's lost to a mid-major in state. Hofstra took Arkansas to the woodshed in a basically similar fashion, was better in both halves. Arkansas could never get over the hump. That was in North Little Rock 2 years ago. That team, by the way, went to Elite Eight. That team also had other bumps and bruises along the way. Don't forget, that game, that loss to Hofstra, followed a week earlier, Arkansas losing to Oklahoma by 22 points in Tulsa. The Razorbacks then come back after those two losses, and they get to play Elon, a D1 school, not a very good. It was one of the worst teams in Division I. They won that game, and then they opened SEC play immediately with 3 straight losses. So they lost 5 out of 6. That was a team that went on to an Elite Eight. The year before, Arkansas had a rough stretch to start SEC play. Started 2-4, first Elite Eight. Last year, Arkansas had a 5-game winning streak in the middle of league play, capped with a big win at Kentucky. But other than that, that team really struggled because of injuries and youth, but really struggled for most of SEC play, finished 8-10, still made a Sweet 16, had a great postseason. The point is that even games like this, when you're as a Hog fan, your football team didn't live up to expectations, and the last thing you wanted to see before you went off to this marquee event out in the Bahamas with tough competition, more to come, you didn't want to see that home loss to a mid-major school. There's a lot of upsets in college basketball, a lot of high majors that are ranked taking losses at home to some of these teams. It hadn't happened under Mushat in Bud Walton Arena, but it has now. Got it out of your system. You're going to get a quality Stanford team out of the Pac-12. Not a great team, but a good team. They've got high major players. Stojakovic, the freshman there, that's a knockdown three-point shooter, a very talented player. I've seen this guy play 5, 6, 7 times in person. I've seen him play in Central Arkansas, a real deal on the Rock. I've seen him play in Atlanta, different stages in grassroots basketball. They've got players. There's other guys there, but just guys, a player that I've seen who's young and I've seen in person. These are guys that Arkansas's defense on the perimeter, they're going to take advantage of Arkansas if they can't cover that 3 line. And Arkansas hasn't been great defending inside. They'll block some shots, but on the other side of that, you're not blocking every shot or altering every shot. And guys are having their way getting into the paint and either making a pass for an easy score or they're just too open and able to get a real clean look to finish around the basket. Those are problem areas. Arkansas can come through this even if they lose 2 or 3 more games over these next. I mean, this is a brutal schedule. 3 in the Bahamas. Then you've got Duke at home. Then you've got Furman, also from the Southern Conference, same as Greensboro. Very good mid-major school. Knocked off 4-seed Virginia in the NCAA tournament last year. They come into Bud Walton Arena, and then you're back in Tulsa for a neutral site game against another high major in Oklahoma. So you might catch a couple more losses here in these next stretch of games. Maybe as many as 3. I think the big thing is this isn't football where every Saturday is really, you can't afford too many losses on Saturdays for your season to go in a much opposite direction than you wanted. In basketball, it doesn't quite work that way in college basketball. You could take take on some artillery and still live to talk about it and still have a great season. This kind of game, when we haven't seen the net rankings come out, this team was just outside, I think 120s in the KenPom numbers. There's no sugarcoating that. Greensboro is going to have to, they've already got the road loss at Vanderbilt, but I think this is one that's not going to be necessarily a bad loss for Arkansas. But it's one of those things on your resume that it won't be considered a good loss. Some losses are. Some actually help. Some losses on your resume are actually better than some bad wins or wins against teams that ranked in the 3 or 200s and when the net comes out. Sometimes playing more quality, even if you take a loss, actually helps your resume. This one's not going to be a resume helper. It can only be a resume hurter. But there's a lot more to go. Arkansas's 3-1. You expected Arkansas to go 4-0. But when you understand, when I wrote the game story, I talked about this as a stunning result, and it was not from the sense of what can happen in college basketball, but in the sense that Muss had never lost at Bud Walton in a non-conference game. There's a lot of expectations on this team. We've seen this team so many times figure out ways to come back in games or finish off a close game with that win, especially at home. And then, some of the other things that I thought were stunning is I thought Greensboro controlled this game in both halves for the most part. Minus a few small stretches, they were the better team. And I thought that was a little bit stunning that it continued. Again, Arkansas probably, a year ago, they led 30 of the 40 minutes. So you could argue they've just been the better team. They've been the better team in the matchup. 1-1. They got a split at Arkansas. They'll take that. Arkansas didn't want that split. So that's just that it is. That game's over. It's in the rearview mirror now. There's not really a whole lot to talk about going off of that. We've gone through most of the numbers and percentages. I think the only other two things I'd point out, it was close, points in the paint, 32-30. Bench scoring, Greensboro more than doubled Arkansas up. Arkansas's been really good with its bench scoring. I didn't mention Mekhi Mitchell. He's played off the bench all year. He had a great double-double in Arkansas's previous game in the win over Old Dominion. He came off the bench, 1 basket, made his only field goal attempt, no rebounds, 4 fouls in the 8 minutes he played. A year ago, he had a double-double in this game. Brazile goes out early. Mitchell, 13 points, 14 rebounds, 4 blocks, a couple of steals. He was incredible. Devo Davis had a double-double in that game a year ago, 10 and 10. Nick Smith Jr., 20-plus points and saved Arkansas's butt in that game. He had just really getting into the fold after missing the first several non-conference games, including the trip to Maui. So, that was an early December game. So Arkansas just didn't have enough guys. Tremont Mark ended up shooting a good percentage, 21 points in this game. El Ellis continues to struggle as a lead guard. Had a really good half, and the second half at times driving the ball, getting to the basket, finishing shots. He's an excellent scorer. Offensive guys, a scorer, still trying to learn the lead guard. 4 first half turnovers. Clean that up in the second half. I still feel like Arkansas's missing several beats in terms of a pace setter and a guy running the offense. I think Ellis is up and down. Had a good game offensively against Old Dominion. Not so much, against Greensboro. He's had some poor games as a lead guard. I think defensively, all the guards are having lapses. Even Devo Davis and Tremont Mark, collectively, it's not good. Trevor Brazile, we see more and more why he's a stretch 4. He gave Arkansas 9 points to go with those 9 rebounds and 2 blocks. I think more is expected from him. He did a better job on the defensive glass. He stepped up there, but I think defensively, it's easy to work around him in that paint. Now, he'll get some block shots, but, if you get into him and get leverage on him, you can push him out of the way where he can't block the shot. He's going in the opposite direction now, and you're going to the basket. So all of these guys, Jalen Graham was out again. He missed this game with back spasms. I don't know how much he would have helped. Maybe he would have. I mentioned Mekhi Mitchell couldn't stay on the floor. Chandler Lawson statistically wasn't a great night, but he really helped Arkansas dig out some big stops and back to back, several multiple possessions stringing together where Arkansas just didn't have enough of those 3 or 4 trips down defensively getting stops. And a lot of that was inside and because of him. So they did have that pocket there to build on. Maybe there was something there Musselman can extract. I don't know what he's going to do. He talked about in the post game they have to look at maybe potentially changing some things. He has said that before about personnel and other things, and they haven't done it. But he has made changes at times. So you just never know when he's actually going to do it. Maybe a loss is enough to do it. What does that look like? How does he do that moving forward? But again, Arkansas, that wasn't their night. We're going to move on. The post-mortem is almost 30 minutes in. I wanted it to be about 20. It ended up going 30. I wanted to keep everything around 30. We're probably going to go 40 because I'm going to talk recruiting. I got to see some high-level guys. By the way, I've already reported previously the Arkansas-Duke game, November 29th. It's the first ACC-SEC challenge. It's on a Wednesday night at 8:15 Central Time. Bud Walton should be wild by that time, by tip-off. And I've already had reported that Terrion Burgess, class of 2025, national top 35 recruit in Benton, 6'9" combo forward. By the way, just had a 30-point, 10-rebound double-double the other night. But we would reported that he plans to be in attendance that night, as well as Jacob Lanier, the class of 2026, another national top 34 star guy out of Maumelle. just a sophomore, class of 2026. Got to see him play yesterday. I'm going to talk about that as well, but we'd previously reported that he'll be there. I've got another name, a guy from Springdale, Isaiah Seeley, class of 2025, national top 50, big 6'6" combo guard. Man, he can play the 1, 2, or 3. Saw him last night as well in Central Arkansas, but he told me, and I put the video interview out today. This is a little intel. It's already out on Twitter or X, but he did tell me he plans to be at that game, so that's the third name out that I've gotten out that's coming. And then Jason J.J. Andrews, the 6'6" wing guard at Little Rock Christian Academy. Man, what a night he had last night. Interviewed him as well. Put that out on X, video interview. But he's also looking at that game. He wasn't able to confirm that he'll be there, but he wants to go. He plans on being there. In fact, he's taken an unofficial visit to Arkansas already. In my interview, just a little bit more information here. He did say that he's looking forward to getting back to Arkansas. So you don't ever want to assume anything in recruiting, even in-state guys. You ask the questions and you don't assume, well, they'll probably come back. There's a lot of time in their recruitment left. You like hearing that that's something that's on their mind and what their plans are. And so we got a little bit of intel recruiting-wise. The only other thing I'd say is Arkansas, to me, now is finished in 2024 in the high school recruiting. I've said that just about every opportunity. But that's why it's so important now to start focusing on some of these next classes. I mean, I mentioned some of these 2025 names, Terrion Burgess, Isaiah Seeley. Both of those guys are going to be there for that Duke game, but that's the next group. And I think Arkansas is in pretty good shape with both of those. You want to call that intel, you can have your own opinions about it, but I think Arkansas is in really good shape with both of those guys right now. In the 2024 in-state class, it was a little bit different. I think there's maybe a more priority focus moving forward on some of the in-state guys. I think, K-Honor Boateng, who committed to Missouri out of that 2024 class, he was a priority. But I think there's more priorities when you start looking at 25 and 26 in-state. There'll be out-of-state guys too. Arkansas does not define itself just within the borders of Arkansas. They've really recruited Texas well. We know that. Some of the footprint state recruiting, very good. Even national. I mean, look at this last class, the 2 high school guys they got. Isaiah Elohim, Sierra Canyon, California. He's an East Coast guy that's been playing out on the West Coast for a while. That was a big get for Arkansas. Former 5-star top 5 player. Injury set him back. Arkansas stayed on him. He's still a national top 30, 35 guy. Been on a lot the biggest stages when you talk about MBPA top 100 camp and some of the other opportunities he's had and shown well. That 6'5" wing, that was a nice get. That's a national recruit. And of course, when we talk about Jalen Shelley, the 6'8" combo forward, another Texas guy, another top 50 recruit, versatile guy, one of those multiple positional guys that Musselman likes on that, can play that 3-4 small, defend a 3, maybe, help on 1s and 2s. Because he's got that kind of versatility. But from Frisco, Texas, now at Link Academy at Branson, hop, skipping, and jumping away from Fayetteville. We know that was the path that Jordan Walsh took to Arkansas. So you see Arkansas has scaled down. When you look at the 2020 and 2022 classes, those were big classes from the high school. 4 out of 2020, then 6 in 2022. A lot of those kids were from Arkansas. Collectively, when you add the 2 classes together, just about every other recruiting cycle for Musselman has been low on high school guys and really big on portal. All of the classes, he gets plenty out of the portal. So that's the common denominator in the recruiting. But when I'm looking at these younger players, I'm going to tell you what I see these guys bringing to the table, because I get to see these guys a lot in different scenarios, whether it's the high school season, whether it's practices or workouts, or spring and summer grassroots. And there's always a very different culture of what is evaluated when you talk about spring and summer, because you're going and traveling and you're matching up against the best players from other parts of the country. And you see guys going up against the best, but they're guys that are coming together, and they're not always a perfect team. And it's more about the exposure for players and, matching up against other great players. And you're looking at different things versus a high school season, unless you're in one of those independent schools playing a national schedule and doing some of those things. And there's some really good public schools. I mean, Duncanville, Texas is one of the better ones right now. There are so many more we could talk about over the years and even currently. But in Arkansas, there's so much talent. There's so much D1 and high major talent. you can still get a really good evaluation in some of these matchups that you're used to seeing if you're traveling on the circuit and watching some of these weekends on the shoe circuits. Because man, there's a lot. But even with but even when you get outside of that, even though it's a different animal and you're playing for a high school team, there's still so much quality in Arkansas. There's a lot of value in evaluation. I mean, Ole Miss had Wes Flanagan. He's an Arkansas guy. We know that. But he was in to watch these games yesterday. You had some other schools there. Arkansas was not, but I think Arkansas is getting ready to take a trip out of the country, and they're probably circling the wagons right now after losing to North Carolina Greensboro. So I'm not taking a shot at the Hogs and not having a coach there, but I saw multiple games where Division I high major players are hooking up and competing against each other. So I'm going to go through some of those. I'm going to start with the guys that Arkansas has put offers out to. I've already mentioned some of those names. But you had Little Rock Christian playing Springdale. That was Isaiah Seeley going up against not only J.J. Deshaun Andrews. Both of those guys have Hog offers. 25 Seeley, class of 26 Andrews. But when you look at Little Rock Christian, they're loaded. They've got Landron Blocker, Layden Blocker, the Hog freshman's brother, who's already signed with Louisiana Tech Division I school. Jamil Wesley, one of the top. To me, this guy's a microwave, man. But he's a scoring point guard. Just a lot of pieces. Corliss Williamson Jr., a senior guard, Big Nasty's son. He's a guard for Little Rock Christian. They've just got a lot of really good players. Springdale's got some good players too, but Seeley's the headliner there. And so this was a really good matchup. Little Rock Christian wins that game by 12, 62-50. Jashawn J.J. Andrews deservedly got the MVP award. Not only did his team win, but he had 19 efficient points, 9 big rebounds. He was close to a double-double there. Had a couple of steals, made some really good passes too. He's a guy that continues to come along. ESPN ranks him the number 25 player in the country, knocking on that 5-star status. But inside and out, he was really good in this game. His athleticism, his strength. He is a great kid on top of that. His dad, Sean Andrews, was an All-American offensive lineman back in the Houston Nutt era and an All-Pro in the NFL lineman with the Philadelphia Eagles. And so he comes from an athletic family from Arkansas. Andrews from the Camden area, the family is. But he's at Little Rock Christian Academy. Jashawn, he's got several high major offers. He just took part in USA Junior National Mini Camp. So this is a national rising star here in Little Rock. MVP performance. But I mentioned the 19 points was a game high. But that was matched on the other side by Isaiah Seeley. I love Isaiah Seeley. I think he should be a priority for the Hogs. 6'6", can run it at the 1. He can play the 2. He can play the 3. He's going to give you 3-pointers. He's going to put you on a spin cycle move. He's got a nice little array of floaters. He's a guy that's got all the soft skills, and he's got a great court awareness. He's going to make the right pass. He can go in there and get your rebounds and block. He had a couple of block shots late in that game. He does a little bit of everything. But one thing I like about him, I started noticing this summer, along with those soft skills and the ability to see the floor and make other guys better and finish shots, he started to understand, I'm 6'6", I've got all this length. He's gotten more of a sturdy frame now. That's still a work in progress, but he's learning how to use that frame to bully ball a little bit. So he's packaging, I'm that guy along with some of the skill to kind of, to play the game, take it to another level is the way I see it. So this is a guy that did some really good things in a game where his team wasn't the better team. Little Rock Christian had probably more weapons on that side of it. And you had 2 high major guys going at it. Landron Blocker, even though he's signed with Louisiana Tech, is a guy that's got some high major stuff, especially the athleticism. What a matchup. A quad 3 loss this early puts any team in a difficult hole to get out of. Yeah, I mean, a quad 4 you can't. I mean, a quad 3 loss is a bad loss. It's not the end of the world, though, with as much as Arkansas has in front of it and all the quad 1 win opportunities Arkansas is going to have. So I'm glad to see that comment. That's true, but it's not something that can't be overcome. You certainly can't stack them. You need to keep it to 1. I don't know what Arkansas. I don't know last year. I need to go back and look at the resume if Arkansas ended up having anything worse than a quad 2 loss. They might have had one. But just getting back to recruiting, I was talking about Seeley. I was talking about Jashawn Andrews, but I was also talking about Landron Blocker. He's a guy that's got some Power 5 stuff in his game. So we'll see how his career goes. But it's always a treat to get to see these high-level players because there was more than one game like this. I got to also see Jacob Lanier, mentioned him already, class of 2026, national top 30 guy by some services. But that 6'6" guy that's also similar to Seeley in the fact that he can run you at the one. He sees the floor so well. He sets teammates up with easy looks all the time. He's got a nice stroke from three. He's a very effective kind of got some Todd Day smoothness in some of the way that he gets into some of his offense for himself. He needs to get stronger. He needs to add strength. He's got great wingspan, very, very high IQ. His shot always looks like it's going in. And I really like this prospect. He and Jashawn J.J. Andrews are both to me, those are both 5-star potential guys before it's said and done in the same class. Similar to the 2022 class when he looked at Nick Smith Jr. and Khalil Ware. I think these two 6'6" players, 6'5", 6'6" guys are going to have a chance to be in those conversations, both being 5 stars in this in-state 2026 class. Very deep class. But getting to see Jacob Lanier, they matched up against Farmington, lost that game. And I'm going to talk about a couple of guys, that aren't on Arkansas's radar. I know Eric Melsman loves Lane Taylor out of Farmington. Taylor has committed. He's a senior, class of 2024, 5'10", 5'9", 5'10" guard in Farmington. So he's off to North Texas. This guy had 41 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists against a young Maumelle team. But Maumelle's got a lot of length and a lot of athleticism and guys that can, give you fits defensively. And this is the kind of night. I mean, Lane can give you a triple-double. He can give you 50 points. He made his first 6 3-point shots playing off the ball, setting picks. Their offense is designed to not have to have him on the ball all the time. And he almost makes the right read on every single play throughout a game. It's amazing. I don't know that I've seen a high school player make the correct decision almost every time, and he's got the skill and talent to back it up. It's really hard to defend him. I've seen him play on one of the major circuits, Adidas 3SSB 2 summers ago, against 4- and 5-star guys, perimeter guys that were 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" consistently, and it was the same thing. The Purdue coaches were 4 deep for him. They didn't offer him, but I thought they were there maybe to see other guys. And when I asked them 2 summers ago who they were there to watch, they told me it was Lane Taylor. They didn't pull the trigger. They didn't love him enough to offer him. But it's always fascinating to watch him. This is a guy that I'm really interested to follow in his career. Like I said, he plays up in Farmington, Northwest Arkansas, right down the street from where the Razorbacks play their games. But another outstanding game for Lane Taylor in that big win over Maumelle. He did just about everything in that game right, and that's usually the case. And then Cortland Muldrew. Now, he helped Springdale in tandem with Isaiah Seeley a year ago. This guy, they got to the finals, the 6A state finals, where they lost to Jonesboro. Go figure, Jonesboro's a dynasty up there. West Swift, they've got it figured out. But Springdale got all the way to the finals. That's, for one thing, teams in Northwest Arkansas they don't always do well in state tournaments. That is a trend that is changing by a lot. It's not just Springdale, but Springdale gets all the way to the finals. Cortland Muldrew was in that backcourt with Isaiah Seeley. He has since transferred to Springdale Harbor. Springdale Harbor took on a loaded Bryant backcourt. Cortland Muldrew, 6'3" guard, 36 points in this win over Bryant. It was a close game. It was a great game. Bryant's got Kellen Robinson, KK Robinson's younger brother, who's a Division I high major talent. Top 100 ranked kid. He had 26 points. He had a nice game as well. Some other guards, RJ Young, 6'4" for Bryant, class of 2026. I mentioned that. He's already got a high major offer. He's a young man that we'll see if Arkansas, how much time they invest in him at 6'4". Got in foul trouble in this game, so it wasn't the most productive game, but he did some good things. Kamarian Bede, another guard that's a strongly built guard, has an offer already from TCU, a high major offer. So Bryant's loaded in the backcourt, but Cortland Muldrew, the 6'3" guard, I'm really interested to see which high major schools jump on him first. This guy is prolific. I mean, again, I mentioned the 36 points, but he can shoot from 3. He's creative off the bounce. He makes passes. He sees other guys. He's a good teammate. He makes the right plays. He'll make plays defensively. So athletic, skill, and most of these guys have really high floor IQs, but a guy like Cortland Mulder, his might be just a little bit extra in some of the comparisons sometimes. But so many good players. Arkansas is always, it seems to me, really rich in the guard talent in the state. It just seems to be that way, and we know that great big men don't go on trees. Arkansas's had the fortune of the last decade or so of having guys like Bobby Portis come through, Daniel Gafford, Jalen Williams. There's some other one. Tim Caesar for North Carolina Greensboro was a very good high school player, 6'9" out of Marion. He helped Greensboro beat Arkansas. He had a really good first half. Gave Arkansas fits, scored, and did some other things. So Arkansas's put out its share of front court guys too, but back court, it's almost every year you can count on Arkansas having several high major guys, getting to see these guys in person. And when I start evaluating, can they play in the SEC? Is this a good move by Arkansas to put these offers out? I think absolutely. I think Arkansas has done it right there. And you want to continue to get these guys on campus. Arkansas is going to do that. I mentioned the Duke game coming up. Several of these guys coming in when we start talking again. Terrion Burgess, class 2025. Jacob Lanier, 2026. Isaiah Seeley, 2025. Those have confirmed. We'll see if J.J. Andrews makes it. It sounds like he wants to be there. We'll see if that works out. But that's another guy that could be there. And there'll be more. Some of the names will start getting out as soon as that light's made green to do it. So that's kind of the recruiting part of it. And again, I'll leave it at this. I think Arkansas is in great shape with both of those priority guys in 2025. Another 2025, they have an offer out to Jashawn Hayes, a coach's son down at Whitehall. He has other high major offers as well as Ole Miss, where his dad played for a while, Josh Hayes. But another big 6'5", 6'6" lead guard, can play the 1, 2, or 3. Coach's son, so he's got that floor IQ. There's just so many players that are worthy in this state, and so you want to see them not only get the attention from the high majors and D1 schools, but then you like to watch how it progresses. And Arkansas's in on the ones. They'll figure out which ones they really want to prioritize as they move forward. But I've got a good feeling for at least a couple of them now, and probably a couple of them in 2 years from now, where Arkansas might just be with those guys as well. Okay, I'm going to move on from recruiting to Pro Hogs. Isaiah Joe set an Oklahoma City Thunder record against the Golden State Warriors on Thursday, made all 7 of his three-point shots. That's the only shots he took from the field. So it was an Oklahoma City Thunder record. He already held the record for most consecutive made threes spanning 2 games. He made 9 in a row to break Kevin Durant's record for the Slim Reaper for consecutive made threes. I was actually on the back end of that record. I went to the OKC Chicago Bulls game in at the Paycom Center, and he'd strung together a really good game prior to that. And then I think he hit his first 2 threes to establish that record. Why don't our big men take the ball to the basket hard? It's a good question. Makai Mitchell, you like to play 2-man game with him out of high. He doesn't have the ball handling skills to work his way from there really into his shot. You kind of have to post him up. If you want to see him put the ball on the floor, it's more of a back to the basket, one dribble drop step or some other turn. He's not really a guy that's going to drive someone in. You want him making passes off those elbows and out high when he's in the 2-man game. Brazil's a guy that can put the ball on the deck, but he's not really looking for contact or to get into somebody. He's looking for a soft finish, and he's got it with skill. I mean, to me, Trevin hasn't disappointed in every aspect. He's been mostly good. I think there are some things that are not in his nature as a player, his physicality, that he's going to continue to work on. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a knock on his effort or execution so far. Right. I mean, Davenport started one game. Does he go back to Chandler Lawson? I don't know. Does he go to Makai Mitchell? Is there something else he's thinking of? They haven't been good defensively overall as a backcourt. I'm surprised by that. Honestly, surprised by that. It's not just on the front line and toughness inside. Although Arkansas's guards have had their moments offensively and at times defensively, they're not making plays on defense and they're not getting stops. You're blocking a few shots. I would rather have a big steal game from your backcourt and getting those live turnovers and going the other way and getting easy scores. Arkansas's not getting that right now. They haven't got it since the Alcorn State game. That's a problem. You're not really stopping the team much around the basket other than when you do block a shot. You got to think about it. you can be a top 10 team in block shots, but that's not that many possessions. Even you might alter some. I mean, Brazil had 2 blocks in the last game, and he altered a few more, but those are just a handful. It's a snapshot of plays in an entire game where when you weren't doing that, you were getting worked over, and that was the majority of it. So I think, Arkansas's got some physicality issues, like Musselman said. You don't want to be so physical that you're committing fouls, but you want to put up a front. You want some kind of wall of defense around the basket where guys are feeling you. And they're not so sure they want to get into you, or they're not so confident they're going to get a clean finish. So they might alter their shot just because they feel your presence, or they might make another decision and get off the ball and kick it back out. Arkansas they've been not good stopping drivers. They're not good, they really haven't been good consistently stopping easy scores. When drivers are going in, they're either getting all the way or they're getting an open look without much pressure, and if help does come, the other rotations aren't there. They're able to drop it off to someone else for an easy look because the defense just didn't work together enough. It wasn't in sync enough. These are things that they can work on and get better at, because a lot of it's just syncing some stuff up, getting guys to understand you just got to be here at this point. You can't still be here ball watching. You got to be here. You got to give a little bit more effort on being a physical presence. You don't have to plow through somebody. You don't have to be an enforcer and a guy that's clearing everybody out like Kamani Johnson was. It'd be nice to have him, but you don't. You've split the twins up. They're not together for the first time ever. The more physical twin is the one who's not there. Overall, I prefer Makai's game. I like both Mitchells. I prefer Makai's game overall, but he's not the most physical of the two, yet he's still your more physical player on your team when you're talking interior. Chandler Lawson does some interesting things because of his length, his understanding. I talked about him so much about being a connector, and that hasn't been something we've seen a lot in the regular season so far. He was great against Purdue. He was great through the exhibition stuff before that in the red-white game. Hit a double-double in the red-white game. But he had moments where he was connecting on defense for Arkansas in that stretch where they got back in the game. He was connecting the others, because even when a guy got by him, he was finishing the play with some kind of rim protection or getting a stop. And so you can't always rely on a guy to be able to do that throughout a game, though. And that's the problem, in stretches, but not throughout. And that's where Arkansas's, they're hurting right now. They can't really go small. They're too finesse. And even when they try to go more traditional, either someone gets in foul trouble or they're having breakdowns in places. And so Musselman's, I believe this. They may not be as good as defensively as they've been the previous 3 years, but they're going to be better than they are now. And I think they're going to get some things corrected. He's going to figure it out. We'll see how many adjustments he actually makes. All right, getting back to the Pro Hogs, as we're getting close to an hour. I didn't plan on this, but I'm glad some have had some questions in here. Going back, I was talking about Isaiah Joe, but 23 points on the road in Golden State. So Oklahoma City was 0-1 against the Warriors after a home loss that went down to a buzzer beater by Steph Curry. Controversial play, by the way. It might have been offensive goaltending, but they reversed the call on that one at the Paycom Center. But back-to-back road games this weekend. It was like a mini baseball road trip series. 2 games, Thursday, Saturday. Oklahoma City goes 2-0 in those games. Isaiah Joe 7 of 7 from 3, 2 of 3 at the foul line, 23 points in the first game. He had a box plus 21 in that one. It ended up, Oklahoma City pretty much controlled that game. It was close for a while, but they had big margins. But a lot of that had to do with Isaiah Joe being a difference maker. The second game last night, 10 points, 2 of 4 from 3, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, a game-high box plus 17. He had a couple of buzzer beaters in the game, one to beat the first quarter shot clock of 3. He had another one, I think, right at the end of the third quarter to pull Oklahoma City within a 2-point deficit. That game ended up going to overtime on a Chet Holmgren 3 at the buzzer to send it to overtime. So Oklahoma City pulls it out in OT, but Isaiah Joe had some big plays in that game. So averaged 16.5 points in those 2 games, 9 of 11 from 3s, one of the top 3-point shooters in the NBA again, just over 47% now on the season, averaging 10 points a game is box plus. He's almost always a box plus, and a lot of the time he's the game high in box plus. He's so good as a decoy because no one will leave him to help, and it just opens up for what the strength of that team is when you look at their pieces overall. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, J-Dub, the other Jalen Williams from Santa Clara, who was runner-up for Rookie of the Year last year. Josh Giddey, a lot of big guards. Lou Dort getting downhill and trying to get to the rim. Chet Holmgren now, a big 37-point game. This is technically his rookie season out of Gonzaga because although he was drafted number 2 last year, he didn't play due to injury, so he's a rookie. So they got a lot of good pieces. Jalen Williams missed some games with a hamstring injury. He's been back for a handful of games, and he's getting some run. He got 6 minutes. Moses Moody's been in the second unit for Golden State, by the way. One of the top defenders already in the backcourt in the NBA in his minutes when you look at the defensive rating. So he's already, and his shooting's been efficient. In his third year, Moses Moody now, he's just got Hall of Famers ahead of him right now. And in some ways, when he's on the court, on a couple of these guys, they're starting to age, and he's a little bit better on the defensive end than some of these other guys are. The trade-off is Golden State's a dynasty, and some of those guys can still get it shooting the ball at a level that other guys, it's hard to match when they've got it going. And, it's an organization that's won 3 NBA titles in 8 years. You're not going to just push guys out real fast. So Moses is still, even as a lottery pick, there's still a pecking order there. But this is now he's consistently in the second unit rotation. That hasn't been the case the previous 2 years, even though at times he's been in it, including the playoffs, including the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago when he was a rookie. He was in the rotation in the Western Conference Finals against the Dallas Mavericks. And Golden State, we know, went on to win the NBA title over the Boston Celtics in 6 games. And so Moses Moody getting some really good run. Daniel Gafford's been a starter now 2 years in a row at a very bad Washington Wizards team, but he's among the leaders in the NBA every year. This year, top 5 in blocks so far at over 2 a game. His effective field goal percentage, true field goal percentage are both top 5 in the NBA. His field goal percentage would probably be number 1 if he had enough attempts, around 78% last I checked. So Daniel Gafford's effective. Bobby Portis doing what he does as a 6-man. Milwaukee's on a bit of a run right now. They've had some struggle points. Dame Lillard, who they traded for, is aging a little bit. Still a great player, but missed a couple of games. Giannis has been playing like an MVP candidate the last 4 or 5 games. But Bobby's had some really nice nights. Had his first double-double of the season. He was one of the big double-double guys last year. In the NBA, top 10 or 11 in that stat. And he didn't quite average a double-double. He did most of the year, but I think he ended up finishing with 9.7 rebounds per game when it was all said and done. But he had his first double-double last week, 19-10 game. He's a big part of the success there. You love to see Anthony Black. He's had 4 or 5 starts now at Orlando, a good up-and-coming young team with a lot of pieces. And he's playing some on the ball, some off the ball. His defense has really stood out to me. He's given some really good NBA players some headaches out there, and you like to see that. Nick Smith Jr. has had a couple of rotation runs here lately. Charlotte has no clue what it's doing down there. It's arguably the worst organization in the NBA, but they've got some nice young pieces. They've just got to figure out how to acclimate guys, and I don't agree with their philosophy of how to play a first rounder. There's been a lot of watching from the bench for Nick. Where two-way guys are playing in the rotation because they've got injury issues right now. I'd be putting him out there because this is a high level. He's a high IQ guy, a lot of energy that Nick plays with, and when they put him in for the final, I think 10 minutes of the fourth quarter in a back and forth game against the Miami Heat, the defending Eastern Conference champs that got to the NBA Finals, he showed very well for himself in that game and did some really good things. He just needs more opportunities. We'll see how much they put him in the G League, which has already started. By the way, I'll give you a little intel here. Jordan Wallace is now, he hasn't played an NBA game yet. He got assigned to the Maine Celtics in the G Leagues, early second-round draft pick with the Boston Celtics. We know they're one of the top handful of teams in the NBA playing for an opportunity to win a title, a lot of veteran guys. So he wasn't going to factor into the rotation. You pretty much knew that. So they've assigned him Maine. He's put up good numbers in his first 3 games there. But I have a feeling in the Monday night game, I think Boston on Monday plays Charlotte. I have a feeling that he will be activated. This might be intel. I don't know. We'll see what it plays out. These things can change, but I think he might just get activated and be with the Celtics that night. and it's the Hornets. And so you got Nick Smith Jr. and not a very good Hornets team. We'll see how tight that game is. We'll see if Jordan Walsh gets to make a debut as an NBA player on Monday in that matchup. So that's tomorrow. So that would be interesting. All right, we're almost to an hour. I've left some guys out. Ricky Council getting run with the Delaware Blue Coats. That's the 76ers. He's on a two-way deal with the Sixers as a rookie. He just had a 22-point game yesterday. His first efficient shooting game, by the way, 7 of 14 from the field. He's had a couple of really big rebounding games too from the wing in the G League. A 9 rebound game and an 8 rebound game. He was real inconsistent at Arkansas there. These are the things he needs to do. Buy in on defense, and with his athleticism and strength, a lot of Hog fans think that he's the best dunker all time at Arkansas. So he's definitely a highlight. I saw one of his G League dunks. Was just what we saw at Arkansas. It was the G League thought enough of it to put it out on their Twitter feed. How important is winning some games in the Bahamas? It's very important. Arkansas needs to find ways to win games. I mean, you're not going to have opportunities to pick up these non-conference neutral site wins unless you win those games when you go play them. Because most of your home games, Duke is an exception. Arkansas hasn't had a home game like that. When they played in that Big 12 SEC Challenge, they never hosted a team like that. They just didn't have it. It was West Virginia, TCU, Oklahoma State a couple of times. And no disrespect to those programs, but they weren't blue bloods, and they certainly weren't teams that were ranked or thought very highly of in the times that Arkansas caught them. Arkansas played at Texas Tech in Mike Anderson's final year and almost won that game. I mean, that was a top 10 ranked team. At Baylor last year, one of the top teams in the Big 12 and one of the top teams in college basketball the last several years, but those were road games. So Arkansas gets Duke at home, but you don't get a lot of non-conference at home that has a lot of value in terms of quad 1 or even a lot of times not even quad 2 win opportunities. So you got to go on these neutral site games, and you might catch 1 or 2 quad 1 win opportunities when it all settles out. It's important to win some of them. I think Arkansas can go in there and win it. Look, Greensboro is a good team. Forget the name. Forget it. This is a bad matchup for Arkansas on top of that. Last year proved it. Arkansas struggled in that game. There were so many similarities. But this Greensboro team's better offensively this year, and Arkansas has taken steps back defensively so far. I don't even know if they're steps back as much as they are a realization of some things that good teams with good coaching are identifying and attacking. Now Musman, it's his turn. It's his move. It's his move to figure this stuff out, and I think he will because he always has. And Arkansas's had rough patches. This is one game. It might end up being a rough patch of games. I mean, you could go 0-3 if teams attack and Arkansas attacks what hasn't been working for Arkansas, and Arkansas hasn't done something to counter it, figure it out, or get it better. Yeah, that could happen. That's how good the quality is out there. You could come home and lose to Duke. You still have Furman. You got Oklahoma. I think realistically you could drop 2 of these next 6 games. And you look back on this total stretch of 7, including Greensboro, you might go 4-3. But you might pick up a couple of quality wins in there in that stretch. You could also run it. You could run that. Arkansas last year 2-1 in Maui with that young team. Brazil was still playing, but Nick Smith hadn't joined the team yet. He hadn't played, and they went 2-1. Granted, they didn't get to the championship game, but they beat a team in the 3rd place game that went on to the national title game and was a ranked team at the time Arkansas played them in early November. They were 3 points away against Creighton in a back-and-forth game. The Creighton's the team that ended up advancing to the title game of that event. So, yeah, Arkansas can put together some stuff here despite not looking good these last couple of games. So I've not given up on the fact that Arkansas can right the ship. Sometimes I'm going back to the matchup thing. I really am. For whatever reason, this is just not a good matchup for Arkansas. And, I don't expect Arkansas to be as poor as it was shooting from 3 because that's the first bad night they've had when you go all the way back to everything we've seen so far. Is Arkansas having a confidence problem? Our team's going to be able to figure Arkansas out sooner than Arkansas figures itself out and gets some things fixed? Those are things we don't know. But I do think Arkansas did a better job on the glass after that being a problem area. So at least there's something there. When we looked at fast break, Arkansas actually won that 14-6. They got clobbered against Old Dominion. So there were a few things that went right. There wasn't enough that went right. It was just a bad matchup, and Arkansas didn't handle it well. Brazil looks tentative with a leg. Yeah, I mean, it's easier when you're on offense or you're being proactive because you have the ball. You're doing, you know what you're going to do because you're initiating something. When you're having to be reactive, and a lot of that's on defense, that's where you can be tentative sometimes. But he's already not a physical top defender anyway. So, there's some stuff that he's just going to have to, he doesn't have to overnight become a physical defender. He just needs to get better at it. Because sometimes a little bit of improvement, especially with his ability to block shots, just a little bit of improvement in some other areas, getting to the spot quicker, leaning a little bit more, maybe making them feel you just a little bit more and think twice about whether or not the look is going to be real clean. Do they want to turn into you? That's not the Trevor in Brazil I was expecting. I watched film. We talked about attacking this way. He hit me this way. I don't know what to do. I mean, you just don't know. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of different guys. It's not just Brazil. It's not just L. Ellis. It's not just Caleb Battle or Devo Day. It's not what one guy's do. All those guys need to fix what they're not doing, and then they got to figure out how to make that come together. And Musselman's done a great job year in and year out when you could see it looks like the world's caving in on them, the sky's falling. Because it's not just one game where they've had problems. They've had stretches of bad games. And you see some of the fan base thinking, well, that's it. That's not how basketball works. It's not college football where 2 or 3 bad weekends and what you thought might happen now, you'll be lucky to salvage a ball game. It's not how college basketball works. It can be that bad. I mean, Arkansas went 8-10 in SEC play. They never could quite get over the hump to be good in league play. But they were good enough when they got just about everybody back, minus Brazil, who we knew wasn't coming back. They were good enough where they put some things together and had learned enough lessons to make it work in postseason. The talent was there. That roster had Final Four stuff. It did. Laugh at it all you want. If you have Brazil the entire season and Nick Smith Jr. the entire season, they had the goods for that. I don't know that they would have done it. There's a lot of things that play into it, but they had the goods for it. This team does too. This is Musselman's second team. When I look at it on paper, when I see what individual guys can do, and the fact that there's all that experience, other things that Musselman's going to figure out how to push these buttons. I believe that. And if he doesn't, that'll be a first. That will be a first. It's year 5. I mean, we saw a first with the first home loss in non-conference play at Bud Walton Arena. We saw his first in-state loss to Hofstra a couple of years ago. You can always look at these things and go, oh, something's not right here. Well, for the moment, but that doesn't mean that that's going to be the whole story. In fact, it's probably far from what this is going to end up being. We're in November still. And one of the double-edged swords with playing Purdue in an exhibition game, a team like that, the matchup was great for Arkansas. Quicker, more athletic. To me, that the Arkansas, and I mentioned, if you go back and listen to the post game on that, my talking points were, other than getting beat on the offensive glass and second chance points and a couple of other things, I thought overall Arkansas was the better team on both sides of the ball. We're talking about Purdue now ranked second in the polls. We know what they did last year. They're really the best program in the Big Ten right now. They have been lately. And they should be, talked about as a great team. But the double-edged sword is the game didn't count. You hate that. Doesn't help net when that comes out. Doesn't do anything for you other than maybe give you some experience and figure out what you've got and how to combat some of your problem areas. But that was a great matchup for Arkansas. Why can't a mid-major present a matchup that's not great for Arkansas? Certainly it can. We see it all the time. It happens. There's a lot of upsets already this week, some last week. We're only 2 weeks into the college basketball season. I'm not making excuses for anybody. They've still got to do the work. They've still got to figure it out. They still got to get it to come together. I think this is going to be a good 3-point shooting team. Throw this one out the window. They might have games where they struggle. This was one of them. I don't think the ball movement helped them get easy shots. And so that means there's too large chunks of game time, too many large chunks of game time where you were trying to beat guys just off the dribble. And that was where they had all those turnovers in the first half. They were just helping. The defense didn't have to move and get out of position. Guys on the wing, all you had to do was know that Arkansas continues to either try to drive or take a shot, an early shot from three. But if they're trying to drive, I'm just going to reach in off my guy. I'm just going to lean in a little bit and scratch that ball out. There was a lot of that in that first half. There was a lot of leaving the feet with nowhere to go with the ball and turn it over that way. So Arkansas's got to correct things on both sides of it. Mostly defense right now. I think the offense has been pretty good overall. I do think Greensboro exposed some stuff. Their man defense was a zone principle, and then they did play zone, and it morphed, it expanded, it collapsed, and they seemed to understand what Arkansas was trying to do because they made it seemed like they did the right things enough in that game. Arkansas's talent took over a lot in the second half on those one-on-one drives. I mean, they either got to the foul line or they scored a lot of those. So they had a nice stretch to get back in the game, but they needed more of that throughout the game. And I think when the ball really has energy, whether you get 200 passes or not, you don't have to be that good on drives all the time. You can make things easy for yourself. That low assist number says everything about the ball energy in that game. I just don't think it was there. So we can talk all we want about defense, and that was the biggest problem for sure. It was. But I think Arkansas also struggled some on offense, and that really hasn't happened a lot yet until that game. I think there's learning on both sides of it. And of course, that's the nature of any sport. No matter how good you are, no matter what your record says you are, you got to still get better because you got other teams that are now have tape on you playing together. You got teams that might have more talent than you. You might have teams that match up with you. And you've got to be able to make adjustments or game plan for it. And I think they're still learning for Arkansas with as many guys as they brought back, with as much talent as they have, as much experience as they have. You could tell one team looked more comfortable playing together than the other. That was the other thing. I think Arkansas is still going through some of that. Who are we? How do we fit together? The other team was the better team that night. So that was it. All right, guys, I went way over. I appreciate some of the comments. I've got to actually jump on Pig Trail Nation in less than 10 minutes. So I'll be same red shirt, different camera angle. I'll be doing that. We tape it early, and it gets put out on YouTube later in the evening, and then it's on the night telecast for Pig Trail Nation. So I'm giving away some trade secrets maybe. But glad everyone could join us who did today. Again, trying to explain things. We'll have moving forward 3 games in 3 days. In the Bahamas, I'm going to do a pregame every day, a postgame every day after the game. We're going to do it like that for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's feast week in college basketball. It's the Arkansas Razorbacks in the Battle for Atlantis. First game is on Wednesday against Stanford. We'll have some written content, obviously, that comes out much sooner than that. But as far as pregame and postgame, doing it on HogvilleNET YouTube Live, those will all be on game, obviously, like we do it now, but just 3 days in a row. So I look forward to wearing it out here on HogvilleNET YouTube Live with Razorback fans. As the 14th ranked Arkansas, we'll see where they're at in the polls. I expect them to still be ranked tomorrow at 3-1. Moves on to the next stage, getting away from home after 4 games at Bud Walton Arena to playing out of the country in the Bahamas in the Battle for Atlantis next week. Until then, thank you.